Blackhawks fans, welcome to another edition of the Four Feathers podcast. I am Ron Luce, joined this evening by the boss man, by El Prez, by the CEO, by whatever you want to call him, Mr. Tony Marchese. Tony, my friend, it's been a hot minute since you and I have done a show together, just the two of us. Not against anything against our buddy Steve. He's currently north of the border, having himself a week right now, so not able to join us here this evening, but there's a lot to talk about. The Stanley Cup is concluded. We've got an extension on the books here to talk about as well. But before we get into anything Blackhawks, how are you, my friend? It looks like you have a new friend over your shoulder here today.
I do. I'm on the moon. I'm with Connor Bedard up here, and we're doing fantastic, Ron. We're going to talk a little bit about an extension for a very well-deserving player. It's going to be a great night. I know it's been a while. I feel like the last time we did a show together was probably the Four Feathers Trade Center, not on the moon, but in my basement. And we got to discuss, all the happenings at the trade deadline. And then we haven't been able to just chat some Blackhawks hockey. I hope Steve's doing well up there north of the border and enjoying his vacation. But we're gonna hold the fort down here. Well, I guess I'm holding the fort down up here. I'm a little high on the Hawks. Ron, let's get it going.
Let's get it going indeed, Tone. Plenty to talk about. And I think before we get into anything related to the Stanley Cup final, which we will touch on here in just a few moments, we have to start off with the big news as of Wednesday, June 18th, as we are recording this show here in the evening. The Chicago Blackhawks have officially come to terms with Ryan Donato on a brand new contract, 4 years, $16 million. That's a $4 million average annual value. Tony, immediate thoughts. We shared back and forth in our Slack channels a little bit earlier today. You and I seem to be on the same page about this contract, but I want to let you elaborate on that further. How are you feeling following the news that Ryan Donato is a Blackhawk for 4 more years?
I love it. I was a little bit worried earlier on after the trade deadline had passed. There was, some extension talk at the time. It seemed like the two sides couldn't come to terms. I believe you and I talked a little bit about this afternoon. It probably was the actual term of the deal, maybe not the money, so to speak. I thought Ryan Donato had, an excellent season. Is there some worry that that's going to be difficult to replicate going forward? Sure. I think that there's some apprehension there, but I think the dollar value of this contract, $4 million AAV, I think that sort of built in, and he didn't get as much as I think he probably could have received on the open market, which is why I think this is a good deal for the Hawks. Yeah, there's that extra year, but what I do like about it is I think Ryan Donato's game is still serviceable, even as a middle six forward. I know he played like a top six guy for the last season, but in the future, middle six guy on a fairly more competitive Blackhawks team, I think he brings some grit to the game. He's not going to eat up too much salary cap space. If year 4, he's a third liner, I don't think you're really complaining about a $4 million cap hit, Ron. You've got the PhD in salary cap geography. I don't, but I don't think, even at my rudimentary level understanding of, second grade salary cap geography, I think that's going to be just fine. I don't know about you.
I think it'll be just fine as well. And that was kind of the reaction that I initially had was this is a great contract, but this is a great contract for both sides. And I think that's something that people need to understand as well, because it's so easy as a fan. And I catch myself doing this. So I will hand up. I do this as well. And I've tried to be better about it in addition. But we have to remember these are people, right? And everybody's probably sitting there, well, why didn't Ryan Donato test free agency? He probably would have gotten more money in the short term on an average annual basis. Sure, maybe a contending team was willing to give him $6-7 million for like 2 years, or maybe a 3-year deal around that same dollar value. So you can make the argument, yeah, well, he would make the same or a little bit more, but there's not the term there. And I genuinely believe that Ryan Donato enjoyed his 2 seasons as a Blackhawk and said, I really do want to stay here. And I want to be a part of this team. And I like this locker room. And I like this organization. And I feel at home here. He's a guy a lot of people have to remember. He's a journeyman by NHL standards, right? He was drafted by the Boston Bruins. He had that incredible debut run right
Excellent
after he
point on
signed.
that. He was a journeyman.
Yeah. And you know, he spent a little time in Boston. Then he gets moved to Minnesota. He's in Minnesota for a little while. Then he gets moved again. You know, finally he feels like he's getting ready to settle in, and then he signs in Seattle. And he's been all over the place. He's played for 4 other teams before the Chicago Blackhawks, and I am drawing a painful blank on the 4th team. It is absolutely awful. I'm going to double check myself here because, you know, we need to be accurate in these parts. San Jose Sharks. That's right. A very brief stint.
The facts, Ron.
A very brief stint out in San Jose. This is a guy who wanted term. Term, I think, was very important to Brian Donato. So to get that 4th year, even at a $4 million cap hit, sure, for this upcoming season, it's an increase from what he's getting. Andreas Athanasiou is falling off the book, so it's kind of null at this point from a totality cap hit standpoint for the Blackhawks. But to your point, Tony, because the salary cap is expected, and some people are even forecasting that the predictions might have been conservative about how much the salary cap is going to grow exponentially over the next few years. In 3 years, a $4 million contract is going to probably look something like that $1.5 to $2 million contract looks right now. And if that's the case, and to your point, even if he's a 3rd line player at that dollar value in 3 years, that's okay. Truthfully, a guy who just put up a 60-point
I think you were paying at the end of the salary, or the end of the Stanley Cup era Blackhawks. You could look at some $4 million contracts and be like, ooh.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh. But I think that it's a different era with the raising cap expectancies. Definitely. And what Ryan Donato brings to the table. Even if his game falls off, I don't think this one hurts you.
I don't think so either. And that was something I was talking to a near and dear friend of mine earlier. And I asked him, I said, how do you feel about, because he's diehard Blackhawks fan. I said, how do you feel about the contract? He said, I don't know. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't know? Like, expand on that thought. And he's like, well, I don't think he's ever going to touch that point total again. And that's a lot of term for a guy who's 29 years old on a very young Blackhawks team. And I said, you know what? Fair. I'll double down on that. And I say, I agree. I don't think he's a 60-point player again in any given season. I think he's probably going to sit in that 40 to 50 range for most of the duration of that contract, which is still great at $4 million. You'll take it every day. But I kind of reminded him, right, about the rising cap. That's something that these teams can take into account. You can make the argument that because of the rising cap, Ryan Donato could have asked for like $7 or $8 million for term, because in a few years, that's going to look like what a current day $4 million contract looks like. He wanted to stay. And of the hockey writers, a friend of the program, Brooke Loferno, she put up a great point. She posted the screenshot from Instagram of the official post from the Blackhawks account. Alex Vlasic liked it. Oliver Moore liked it. A lot of other Blackhawks liked it. It's very clear that Ryan Donato was appreciated in that locker room as well. And because of what he brings to the game, because he can do so many things, I would have been comfortable giving him 5. I know I was in the minority of that group amongst Blackhawks, you know, the Blackhawks fan base that is active and vocal on social media. But to your point, Tony, a rising cap. He does so many things. It's going to be huge, I think, for this team moving forward to have a guy who's another veteran, right? Kind of fits that Teuvo Teravainen and Tyler Bertuzzi role for this young team. You know, you're not too old to where you're ending your career like a Pat Maroon did, but you're going to be a meaningful contributor when this team should be pretty okay in the next 2 years.
Yeah, I think he wanted to be around here when this team gets good again.
Yeah.
I think, you know, the question I was going to ask you is, what would you expect him AAV wise on the open market? I was thinking he could probably fetch somewhere near 5.5.
I would say some team would get
3.
Some team would get desperate and probably be willing to give him like 6 over like 2 to 3
and see,
years.
that's where I'm like, $4 million. I thought we were going to probably have to go up to 5 in order to retain him, just based on where the negotiations were going. And some of the stuff that was tossed around post trade deadline was, it didn't seem like these guys were going to agree on something. We were sitting here a week ago and you were telling me like, oh, I think you have a message in the Slack. We got to fill the Ryan Donato hole. And then like a day
I was like,
later,
don't worry, they have to
signing.
fill the Ryan Donato hole. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we were all mentally prepared around here for Ryan Donato to not be on this Blackhawks hockey team going 100%. Forward, just based on where it was. And then you get a contract that comes in, you know, and maybe just maybe this is some of Chris O'Hearn at work. That was a acquisition for the Blackhawks front office, a guy that knows how to navigate some of these things. So I'm going to put this one in his file as the first one. You know, we were talking a little bit this afternoon. What do these extensions look like for other guys? What does it mean for the future, Ron? I mean, this is, I think, an excellent contract. It's got enough term on it where he can be around. You talked about the human element of it, the longevity standpoint. It seems to be loved in the locker room. That's a guy that probably, you know, sees the vision here. Not just like I'm chasing the dollars. I'm also chasing some success to sign a 4-year deal. After that point, you would think that he left some money on the table. That's just my take. That's my early take on it. I think he left some money on the table to be in Chicago. I like that. That's the kind of guy that I want on my team. I think that drives, you know, the wanting the will to be here. You haven't seen that in Chicago in a while, at least on the Blackhawks. Seemed like there was a mass exodus.
Yep. And I think there's an excitement around the team. I think that's a lot of what Kyle Davidson was also able to sell players like Tyler Bertuzzi and Teuvo Teravainen on. But also tying it once again back quickly into the human element. This is a guy who never got to stay in one city more than like 2 years in his NHL career. And he's been around for a while now. Being in one place really now for 6 years, that's the dream for a lot of players. You don't want to move your family if you don't have to, especially if it's somewhere you like to be.
And you know what? He'll go down known as a Blackhawk now. That's my
Blackhawks legend.
Sort of, yeah, he will be, because that's a long tenure, especially in professional sports these days. And you know, hopefully they can continue to build the team around it. I just think it's a really good deal for both parties, like you said. So that's why I'm over the moon for it, Ron.
Over the moon, indeed. I'll tell you what, Tom. With Ryan Donato getting locked up for another 4 years, you do know what this means, right?
I was going to ask.
He could become a part of the Ron Luce jersey collection.
Is he going to become part of the Ron Luce?
I think he's going to, because I know I'm on these airwaves. We can probably dig into the archives and find it. When Ryan Donato signed with this team, I was probably the most excited person in Blackhawks fans.
You know what? That's
Ryan Donato signing.
That's a great point, because I remember when Ryan Donato was signed, and you were pretty happy about it. And I was not familiar with Ryan Donato's game. And now we sit here years later, 2 years later, and like, he's probably arguably one of my favorite players on the team. You know, we're running the Four Feathers podcast account. Like, I just Ryan Donato goal gif. It's right there, because he was scoring all the time. He was active in plays. He was the type of guy that you like to watch play hockey. And again, man, I think this was a good move. I'm glad we don't have to fill the hole that would have been left in this lineup had he left. Now, on the same note, I don't think it would have been insurmountable to fill that hole, but this is a guy that clearly wanted to be here.
1,000%. Do I want to start the ruffling of feathers now, Tone?
I don't know. We're a little early in the show. We're only 15 minutes in, Ron.
We are 15 early. Minutes. We are early, but I'm going to drop a little ruffle little ruffle nugget, just a little one.
Just a little ruffle nugget. No big ruffling of feathers right now.
Not only did the Blackhawks fill the Ryan Donato hole, quote unquote, by keeping Ryan Donato, but there's your big move in Blackhawks free agency is bringing back Ryan Donato.
It might be.
It might be.
Like, I think there's a lot of people.
We're going to get a lot
of people that, we'll get into it. But I think there's a lot of people out there that want to see some big things happen in free agency this year.
I agree.
That's just a pulse I'm getting from reading my X timeline.
100%. Matt here says 4 AAV for Ryan Donato is a great value. I completely agree. At least you're smiling now, Tony.
I've been smiling. I don't know what
it took us a little bit. It took us a little bit. You did look a little angry on, a little hashtag Matt online about what maybe.
That's because I was reading some White Sox stuff while you were talking, so it made me mad.
Matt says he's pulling out his feathers at the concept of that. We'll return to that in a little bit, so stay tuned for that. But I think, Tone, to kind of close out the Ryan Donato topic here, I think everybody feels good about it. I really haven't seen anybody be upset about it anywhere. There might be people that are like,
how many times does a sports franchise make a move that seems somewhat universally loved?
Very rarely.
It's very rare. You got to celebrate your wins.
That is a note that I have coming out in a piece for tomorrow morning, which is effectively my reaction in a little bit deeper words of what we talked about here in written form. So be sure to check that out over on OnTimeSportsNet.com. But I said the exact same thing. Like, how often do you see where like everybody's involved that's happy, including the fans? Like that, it doesn't happen all that much. So especially for a player like Ryan Donato, obviously signing a big star player, everybody gets stoked, and that's great. But like for a guy of Ryan Donato's stature, I suppose, in the grand scheme of the NHL, it's very rare that these type of moves like get people truly happy on all levels. And it seems like this one has, in fact, done that. Tony, speaking of things that may or may not have made you either happy or sad, the Stanley Cup final has come to a conclusion. Whether you were rooting for the Western Conference Edmonton Oilers or the Eastern Conference Florida Panthers, it does not matter. In 6 games, the Panthers repeat as Stanley Cup champions. Tony, we talked about this a little bit last night as it was happening, and it was the first thing I thought of when it was all said and done. We'll get to some other thoughts here about the Cup and just how we enjoyed the series and things like that. But Seth Jones is a Stanley Cup champion, Tony.
Seth Jones is a Stanley Cup champion, and I think I saw a lot of people, the man online meter for Seth Jones being a Stanley Cup champion seemed to, I said we're only 15 minutes and we're 17 minutes in. Now we're really ruffling some feathers, for better or for worse. I think we've maintained a pretty consistent tone on this show across my voice, your voice, Steve's voice. I don't think anybody here was really a Seth Jones hater for better or for worse. I don't think we liked some of his play. I don't think we liked some of his antics. I don't think that we also blamed him for everything that was going on, which he was a punching bag, like in retrospect, 100%. Very much a punching bag online. Like not even just like Blackhawks Twitter, like go to Facebook if you want to read some stuff about Seth Jones. I'm happy for him that he won a Stanley Cup. I'm happy for him. He got to go to another team. He's no longer the problem or the punching bag here, and he reached the pinnacle of sport. As a person, like that's great for Seth Jones. I'm happy we have Spencer Knight in that. And guess what?
Mine.
Yeah, like where I sit right now, it does not bother me one bit that Seth Jones is a Stanley Cup champion. Mm-hmm. I'm happy we have Spencer Knight in that. I can't control anything that's happening in Florida. I can't control anything that's happening on the Hawks. But when I invest my time into watching Arvid Soderblom or Peter Mrazek, I'd much rather watch Spencer Knight in that for the Chicago Blackhawks than either of those two guys. And
sure,
Lord only knows if Drew Comesso or any of the other goalie prospects in the Blackhawks system can come up and play as well as Spencer Knight did down the stretch. So I'm happy it worked out for them. That's a sign of a good business deal, good trade in sports. They got to go on and achieve their thing. You hope it works out on the other end. And I've been burned by trades, Ron. And you know this. I've been burned by trades. As a Chicago White Sox fan, I've given up, Chris Sale for Yohan Moncada and Michael Kopech, and that didn't really work out. I believe we also acquired a guy by the name of Eloy Jimenez, who I pictured on my timeline the other day to show you his toughness, on full display over Stanley Cup related Matthew Tkachuk playing with all sorts of different injuries and muscles torn off bones and all that other stuff. So I know what it's like to be on the bad end of a deal. I hope it doesn't turn out that way with Spencer Knight, but the early returns so far tell me that Spencer Knight is better in goal than what the Blackhawks had in the system.
I know we're in mid-season mode here at Four Feathers Podcast from a consistency basis when a point about Seth Jones can be spun into appreciation about Spencer Knight by Tony Marchese. The goalie guy gets his goalie talking every given time.
We're still good here, man. we're still good here.
I'm going to give an assist here to Mr. Matt Redacted because he's actually set me up for my response point with some comments. So I'm going to throw him in there as we go. I agree with you about the Seth Jones hate. And I have a story to tell because, as Matt says here, hated the Seth Jones contract, but not necessarily a Seth Jones hater. And we got that a lot, right? I think a lot of people said that, especially early on. It was, like the player, don't love the dollars. And in hindsight, that contract's going to age fine because the unforeseen happened with the salary cap rising. It was a
Stan Bowman deal.
Sure. And that's what people have to remember. I look back personally at a contract at the time that I hated. And at the time, I confused the contract for the player. And in hindsight, I step back now as I've gotten older and I'm a little more, wiser, at least I like to think I am. And I took a step back and I went, that was a bad look by you at the time, man. You didn't hate the player. You just didn't like the contract. That was Brian Bickle. Speaking of 4-year, $4 million a year contracts.
Yeah, let's look at that.
So I think that's what's being confused right now in the world of Seth Jones is people hated the contract, so they used the player as the punching bag. And in retrospect, I think a lot of people are going to go, it was just the contract. Like, it wasn't the player. He did so many good things.
How many times has that happened in sports, though?
A ton. A ton.
I'm sure you could pick out 3 or 4 Cubs players right off.
Dansby Swanson, Ian Happ, Dansby Swanson, Nico Horner, all of them. Yeah, absolutely. It happens all the time. So there's this sense of like, you got to remember, these guys are just trying to make their money, man. Like, you can't get mad at them because somebody put the piece of paper in front of them and said, go ahead and sign here and we'll pay you this amount of money. You would do it too, even if you don't think you deserved it.
You mean people have good agents?
Yeah, exactly. Isn't it a crazy thing? I think that's something to remember when it's all said and done. But Matt is right? Like, it worked out for both sides. Seth Jones is going to compete for Stanley Cups for probably the rest of his contract, or at least pretty close to most of it. You get a young goaltender in Spencer Knight out of it, who has a Stanley Cup pedigree because he was Bob's backup a season ago, obviously before the trade. And maybe he becomes a part of your future core that's hopefully winning Stanley Cups in Chicago. But
why am I really happy with a lot of the moves? And this is a weird space to be in, but like, you look at that trade, the Seth Jones trade, you look at this Ryan Donato deal. I'm putting on my tracking cap.
Sure.
And I like a lot of these moves so far that Kyle Davidson's made. And I'm very critical because I'm still skeptical that he can get it over the finish line. But a lot of the things that he's done, you can't really argue with.
But what if I told you to not get up for the letdown?
I'm not trying to get up for the letdown. That I'm still very skeptical. I'm just saying recency.
Yes.
I mean, everybody was questioning what the fuck was going on at the UC the night that Taylor Hall was traded. I believe you were there as well.
Was not present, but was still wondering the same thing.
You had tickets that game. I wasn't sure if you made it, but like, there was buzz in the arena. Like, what is going on? And then, I'm sitting here, I'm getting text from my wife that the TV camera's feeding over to Kyle Davidson in his suite, and he looks, sort of shook and like, it was just like a weird day. And then boom, like, all the rest of the subsequent moves have been okay. And I think, we'll get to the next ones, but I think a lot of fans prayers will be answered when they do a buyout in a
Yeah.
couple of days.
100%, and we're certainly going to get to that here too. A couple quick points though before we keep pushing forward and get some final wrap up thoughts here, because I want to hear what you thought about the Stanley Cup final as well. Matt says here, we all were confused about trading for your own pick. You know why a team trades for their own pick? Because you need all your own picks in order to RFA's offer sheet, guys.
This is why he has a PhD.
We'll have to wait and see. But a couple of good notes from Matt here, because I was in the same camp. If you were rooting for anything but the Canadian streak to end or to continue, you were wrong. I feel the exact same way. I wanted Canada's Stanley Cup-less streak to absolutely continue. So I wanted Florida to win for that.
Thank you. I think I'm in agreement with that as well. Ron, I was gonna be mean in the group chat that we're in with a couple of other hockey fans, some maybe from Canada. Like, go Team USA. Like, if you were rooting for the Oilers and you're a USA hockey fan, I feel like there was a little four nations face off tension there, and I feel like the Team USA, Matthew Tkachuk, got that one back.
I think as well, there was also, I think there's a lot of USA fans though that are rooting for McDavid and Draisaitl. Genuinely, I think that's where a lot of that comes from.
I don't, and I don't know why. I don't. Connor McDavid's great, but from a Blackhawks standpoint, from a Chicago Blackhawks fan who watched Jonathan Toews win 3 Stanley Cups and not get the recognition that I think he should get as a Canadian hockey legend, I always want there to be Jonathan Toews with more Stanley Cups than Connor McDavid.
Interesting.
That's just my take on it.
Can I throw just a little bit more spice into the show here?
That might have ruffled a little bit of feathers, but go ahead. I'll let you throw
I want to ruffle some more feathers here a little bit. And ruffling feathers can also just be getting you hot and bothered too. It doesn't have to necessarily mean pissing you off. What if Connor McDavid gets finally tired of losing it in Edmonton, and when he's a free agent in a year, 2 years? I think a year. I think he's done with that contract as of next year. Let's get really delusional. Why not? Because wouldn't that be fun?
Shit, dude.
Anyway.
That's too that we're gonna need to put like a not safe for work.
Yeah, there might be some
stuff like that.
Recreations of the Vince McMahon memes out there of flipping out of the chair.
I mean, that would be
when it's all said and done.
That would be disgusting.
It would be something. Matt says here, though, let's go Blackhawks chants at the Elbow Room in Florida. Did you see?
I don't think they were doing let's go Blackhawks.
They weren't, but did you see the thank you Boston chants with Marchand?
See, that's the only player that I don't
like on Florida.
I was like, come on, man. Why'd they have to go and get Marchand?
I mean,
there's history. There's history.
Sure.
There's history there. Reasons
Hawks,
not to like him.
But
I think
at the better end of it.
I think at the end of the day, we can all agree that everyone's happy that Corey Perry lost another Stanley Cup final.
Yeah.
Like, is anybody mad
of approval on that one?
Yeah. Is anybody mad that Corey Perry lost another Stanley Cup final? I don't think there's anyone out there. Like it.
He's got the infinity stones of lost Stanley Cups.
When you just can't get the job done that many times in a row, dude, you're probably just fucking cursed.
Maybe. And look at all those years in Anaheim that they came up short.
And you know what? The stupid part that pisses me off, Ron, and I'm getting really fucking animated now. The part that pisses me off is that he came here for just enough for you to like, do I like this guy?
To try and change your opinion.
Team? No, he's fucking not. Get the fuck out of here. God damn it. I'm glad he lost another Stanley Cup final. Holy shit.
I think that's a good pulse on how we felt about the series as a whole. And
I was this close to buying a jersey.
I know. I remember that discussion.
It was bad.
I
I am
distinctly
very
remember
animated
that
online
one.
right now.
You are very animated online. Speaking of animated, let's get animated and continue into more of our predictions, what ifs. The next 10 days are going to be crazy. This is my honest to God, like the next 2 weeks are genuinely like my the holiday season for me.
Your Christmas. You've said
Yeah,
this for
like
years.
it's the holiday season, right? Like you build up getting off of school a little bit before Christmas, and there's additional days off that are a part of this. That's the whole next 2 weeks for Ron Lewis. And we already saw it today. Ryan Donato signs his extension, as we've already discussed. Eric Halla gets traded to the Nashville Predators from the New Jersey Devils. There's moves already happening, and it's just going to get crazier from here. Really?
You got to let the people know what's going on.
Matt.
I mean, this is unverified.
Matt is saying, yeah, this is unverified, but Marchand got an extension, updated contract. Did that happen just now? 8 million AAV. I know there was the discussions of a Marchand contract being out there for 3x8, but I don't know if that's necessarily with Florida.
I don't see it on Google yet, but I'm not on X at the moment. I'm trying to pull shit.
Well, that's why we got to go to X.
See.
But while we're potentially going to stir up a whole bunch of shit to start the offseason here, let's go ahead and stir up more about what the Blackhawks could do this offseason. Because I have some thoughts and opinions about what I expect or what my gut is telling me, I think, more so. I think it's just a gut feeling. It's not necessarily I'm convicted. I just something in the Ron Lewis spidey senses is telling me something's going to happen. Where is your head stand? And to start, right? Because we're going to go down a couple different rabbit holes here. What do you think they do with the number 3 pick for starters? Are they staying or at the pick and drafting, or are they using it as trade capital?
I think I talked about this a little bit. It's not going to be, well, on our last show, I talked about this a little bit. I don't think it's going to be easy for them to move it until the number 1 selection is in overall. Because at least from what we're hearing right now, it's New York is going to go Michael Misa. Because there was a lot of talk that Hagen's might be their pick, hometown kid.
Yep.
And then, San Jose, obviously, probably going to take someone on defense. And there's someone that's probably worthy of the number 1 pick overall. I think probably the strongest one. So if Misa falls to 3, I think the Hawks probably would take Michael Misa. I think he's cream of the crop, best forward available. But it seems right now, at least from what I'm hearing, that Misa's going to go number 1. And that's where I always felt like 3 in this draft is probably the worst place that you can be if you're Kyle Davidson, because you're going to be heavily evaluated on what you do here. It can go extremely right for your organization, or it can go extremely wrong. I just think the risk reward here is like exponentially better than a lot of moves that he's made. And this is on the heels of me saying, like, I'm very happy with everything that he's just done. What would make me the happiest is if he trades out of that pick for a competent young forward. Yes. Mm-hmm. Someone that's going to be able to grow with this organization. I'm not sold on any of these draft picks outside of maybe Misa. I know I put something out there that I like Porter Martone. I think that's a couple of years away. I'm not really sold on Frontal. Denoyer, I stay the hell away. That's where I'm at with it. And, you read this stuff from Ben Pope. He put out an interesting poll, like, of these names, who do you want the team to pick? And then he ran another poll, and it was, of these names, who are you going to be most, pissed off that the Blackhawks took care? And then he goes and writes a column about the number 3 overall pick and some other news in there. And at the end of it, he, sort of dropped in there that, a lot of fans are going to be disappointed. Maybe they're not going to draft anyone. Maybe they're going to trade it. I don't know. I just don't want to be sitting there at the end of the day with Denoyer or Frondell. I think that is going to make me feel very underwhelmed with the draft, knowing that you have this asset that you could potentially move somewhere and help someone out. Again, though, it takes two to tango. So maybe that number 3 overall pick isn't really worth what it is in some years, especially because we're sitting here talking about like, we're not sold on any of these guys being stars. You're just in a really tough spot. If he can pull something off, I'll be really happy. So I would say I think he's going to try and trade it.
Yeah.
If he doesn't, I think a lot of Blackhawks fans are going to be disappointed.
Yeah, AJ here in the comments says we should trade the pick. There's some Martone as well thrown in there. A lot of belief that Schaefer maybe is the number one. That comes from both a couple of our guys, Matt and even Mr. Skokes here as well. I think
does San Jose. I'm not too familiar with this, but does San Jose really need a Michael Misa either?
They don't necessarily need him, but if you're at that spot, I think it's best available. And to me, Misa, like he's going to be a scoring winger in the NHL. The Sharks will happily take another one of those. You know
There's
what I mean?
Comment that just came in from Skokes, and you and I had a conversation about this earlier this afternoon, and I'd like you to give your side of this because I think it was good.
Sure. So the comment here, for those that might be listening on audio only, I'd start trade talks for players with 25, wouldn't start bargaining with the number 3 pick. I think the reason that they've kind of put the number 3 pick is out there right now, my belief is it's because of the strength of the draft class. This is widely considered an underwhelming class from a top-tier talent perspective.
I mean, Frank Serious Spaghetti and Meatballs is walking around somewhere right now and just saying the Blackhawks number 3 pick is available. He's just on repeat. He's just on repeat with it. That's all
100%.
Saying.
To the point where I genuinely believe the Hawks look at this draft and they say the only way we're going to be able to move the pick for a young player is if we use number 3, because these teams have to be like, well, we are really convicted about X, Y, or Z guy at that number 3 pick, and we want to jump everybody for a chance at him because Misa and Schaefer are probably not going to be there. You're banking on a team that wants to come up and maybe, just maybe, needs to utilize cap space or whatever, and you can get a good young player for the future. In addition to that, as I was talking with you about this afternoon, Tony, I think Anthony said this on our last Four Feathers episode. If you guys haven't listened to that one yet, I don't know what you're doing. Go check out that one after you listen to this one. He
Not
even
me,
said,
Anthony. The other.
No, the other Anthony, the prospect Don, Mr. Anthony. When we were speaking to him, he mentioned that there's a lot of really nice names in kind of that 20 to 40 range. Dare I say, for you NFL draft sickos out there like myself, it was kind of reminiscent of this year's NFL draft. Not a lot of teams wanted to trade up because they believed that the talent of the draft was that 20 to 40 range, and they'd rather be there than try to move up into the teens or into the single digits to try and get a player. I think the NHL draft is kind of that way too. I'm not saying that there's still going to be studs or whatever in that kind of that room, but I think that's the group of players in this year's prospect pool that teams look and go, you know what, we can probably find somebody that's going to help us win hockey games at some point in the future in that range. Doesn't mean he's going to be a star, but maybe he's a really good third line checking center or something of that nature. That's what they're looking for. So I think the Blackhawks want those picks. I think 25 they want to keep. Anthony expressed how much he would hate to see 25 go. If that's where the value is the draft, I think 25, and their 2-2s are probably their most important picks of this year's draft. I think if they're not truly convicted about anybody not named Michael Misa up at the top, I think you have to go ahead and entertain the idea of getting rid of that pick. Because when it's all said and done, you want to get value. And I genuinely believe the Blackhawks aren't convicted on anybody, and that's why they're willing to ship it if they can get the right player in the building for the long term.
That's where, I mean, here's the counter argument. Thank you, Matt. That might make 25 even more so the pick to deal. And this is what I said to you earlier on the phone. I said, well, why wouldn't we want to try and move that? I think the proper, retort to that might be, well, it's still the 25th pick. It's not going to be something that's potentially high end. So I think that there's a little more risk reward in the deal, and it's a little bit sexier to have that number 3 pick thrown out there in terms of a higher ceiling player rather than a, this guy might help us win some game, but he's going to be low floor. He might be a,
or a high floor and low ceiling.
Bottom six guy, that can come in and step in, or a role player type. But I mean, that just shows where this draft class is compared to previous ones.
I'll also remind people at home, and this was something I found fascinating. I don't recall the study. I don't recall, where this came from, but I do recall reading it. And it was that in the NHL specifically, because this is not the NFL draft where the 25th pick still gets you Justin Jefferson of something of that era. A player picked outside of like the top 12 has the same likelihood of making it to the NHL as like a 3rd round pick. I wouldn't overthink the 25 as this and done. When it's all said and done, they just need to extract as much value from this draft as they can, and that might require them moving number 3, especially if it's for a J.J. Paterka, if it's for a Jason Robertson, if it's for a player of that echelon. I would love for Brady, but I know it's not going to happen.
You were public enemy number 1.
Very much hated in Ottawa Senators fandom.
They just did not.
They did not like me.
They did not like that.
If I went to Ottawa, I'm convinced somebody would find me and try to like fight me on the street.
That was crazy.
It was something. Crazy. But I think that's where it goes with the pick. Truly, I think there's a world where they have a guy that they like, and if they have to stay put, that's what they do. But I really believe that pick is going to get utilized if they have the opportunity to go up and get another player. Maybe you look at a team like Buffalo who might like 2 guys in the top 10. Hey, here's 3 and a couple. Maybe you have to use another pick from next year because next year's a stronger draft, and that later pick might be worth more from Florida next year. Maybe you do that, and who knows? Maybe you can land a Jason Robertson on the top of that. Maybe you take on a Matt Dumba as well in that trade for 1 year, and you help Dallas get out of their salary cap problems so they can bring back Matt Duchene and Jamie Benn and some of these other guys that are pending free agents. There's a world where that can get to a place where everybody's really happy at the end of it.
I mean, it's really going to come down to teams that are trying to move someone that is going to help them get underneath the salary cap in order to do whatever they're trying to do. And I mean, like I said, it takes 2 to tango. It takes 2 to tango. Will it get moved? I think it will. I hope it does. But you were the one who was telling me a couple of weeks ago, these picks don't move very often. And there's a reason for that historically. So I think that, I'm trying not to get up for the letdown, as you said just a little bit ago.
Understandably so, my friend. I'm intrigued to see what happens because, Tony, maybe this is a good time to shift to if we have any bold predictions. I have one, and it's kind of a bold gut feeling as what I'm going to call it.
Okay.
My gut feeling is there's going to be a trade. I don't know if it's necessarily going to involve number 3 or draft picks or whatever, but the Blackhawks, I firmly believe, are going to make a trade in the next 10 days, pretty much leading up to the first round of the NHL draft. So that's a week from this coming Friday. So as you're listening to this, do the math. He's done it in the past. You noted that when we were talking about this a little bit before, when it was all said and done this afternoon and we got off the phone, of, maybe they replicate years past because Kyle Davidson has traded for Taylor Hall and traded for Nick Foligno and traded for Corey Perry and traded for some of these guys in that window. What if they do it again? Ilya Mikheyev last year. What if they do it again? I think that's going to happen. I genuinely believe Kyle Davidson likes that method of adding. Because I think this year, even with the rising cap and not as many teams in cap trouble per se,
there's still people that want to move on from assets.
Bingo. And I think there's a world where the Blackhawks can use that to just genuinely make their team better. It might only be for the short term, but that's okay. Because ideally, look at a year from now, for example, the Blackhawks have a nauseating amount of cap space. I have another bold prediction, but I will save it because I want to turn the table back to you, sir. Do you have one off the top of your head for the next 10 days, maybe a little after free agency opens? What say you?
I think my bold prediction is this roster is going to look really, and there's one person who's going to listen to this and be like, it's going to make my head explode. Stuart, I'm talking to you. I think that this team is going to look very much like it did in the last 15 games of last season.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that that's a bad thing. I know that's a small sample size, but you need a larger sample size to figure out what it is that you need in order to take that
Bingo.
next step. And so while I do think that there's a possibility of a trade, I don't know if it's going to be that guy that's going to come in here. Everybody wants, and he's my favorite player. I named my dog after him. Marian Hossa 2.0 is not walking in to this Chicago Blackhawks team. That's my bold prediction. You're still a couple years away from that happening. It's going to look very much like it did last year. And if you read that article, I believe it was Ben Pope again.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Ben Pope. I'd have to go back to our Slack, figure out where it was. But if the approach that Kyle Davidson is committing to at this point is to build through the draft, and yes, I'm the first person to call this out. We're moving the goalposts again, just a little bit. I don't think it's the wrong thing to do, but at the same time, I am going to say it's a goalpost move.
Yeah.
You're looking at the cap space. You're looking at what these contract extensions are going to come in. Obviously, there's some financial reports that have hit his desk. Here's what this is going to look like. I don't think you're going to see any big splash in free agency. I think it's going to look very, very similar to what it did last year. Even now, more so, given all the time we just spent talking about Ryan Donato being back, it is going to look a lot like last year. There's going to be some people who are very mad online about it looking like it did at the end of last year. But I think it's going to be a very whelming offseason. That's my bold prediction.
Very whelming. I genuinely enjoy that term. Yeah, I think you're right, Tone. That kind of leads into my next bold prediction because I agree with you, Tony. I do believe it's going to be a very whelming offseason. And I mean that especially, Crackham, in the sense of free agency signings. I think that's the biggest place, especially now that Ryan Donato is back and taking up a lineup spot. But think about this. I think the Blackhawks are active this offseason, but I think it's with guys in their own building already. I think we see not one, but two extensions this summer after July 1st for Connor Bedard and Frank Nazar.
Oh, boy.
I think that's the big money movement we see because then this is a little bit of a tinfoil hat take as well built into this one. Because then
I've got a really hot take to give after this. I don't even know if I firmly believe in it, but keep going.
We're going to find out. But then Kyle Davidson knows what money he's operating with in next year in free agency when those contracts kick in, as well as the couple years following. I believe the report you were looking for, Tony, was from Scott Powers and Mark Lazarus talking on their podcast. They said that there is belief if the salary cap rises as fast as it's believed to, that the richer teams will actually have an advantage. Think baseball, because some teams might not spend all the way to the cap. Guess who's going to have advantage at that in 3 or 4 years when you know what you're cooking with? It's the Chicago Blackhawks. There is a little bit of goalpost movement.
Just blew up my hot take.
There is a little bit of goalpost movement because also noted in that synopsis that was from Wally Maz on X. He did a great little summary and synopsis. Got to give love where it's due. He also noted that there was belief that Kyle Davidson was, getting a little impatient with the rebuild and maybe going to get a little more aggressive, but then was very, very pleased halfway through the year with the development of some of these guys that they maybe didn't expect as much from. I think Sam Renzel and Oliver Moore are two of those players. Then all of a sudden, I think it changed the narrative a little bit where now they can be a little more patient and still get better from within. But in a few years, that's going to be an advantage for this team, especially when you know what are our two core pillar pieces going to cost and what flexibility are we going to have for how many years to really start getting creative and field a winning hockey team, especially if they can take advantage of smaller market teams who maybe won't want to spend all the way to the cap.
I think the ascension of Frank Nazar is really what you're looking at, that from an offensive standpoint, right? We've been dying for someone to come in here and help Connor Bedard, and maybe it's a second line guy, but at least put up some points. And Frank Nazar jumped from, could he be a role guy, to all of a sudden you're looking at, this guy might be playing U.S. Olympic hockey. That's a big jump. And
1,000%.
that's a prospect that you probably, I'm not saying it's a hit yet, but we're nearing that point where Frank Nazar is potentially a star in this league. I'm cautioning myself saying that, but like we're kind of there. Like there's highlights of him. IHF, he's really a linchpin in this whole entire thing. That's a guy that you might have had to go out on the market and find. And that takes the pressure off of the back end of that system. What's Sasha Boisvert going to be? What's Marek Vernacker going to be? It takes pressure off of that next coming wave when you've got a guy like Frank Nazar that you're starting to see hit. And then you bring up Sam Renzel. Artem Levshinov is another guy. Didn't expect to see him play NHL level hockey this season. So if there's an accelerated timeline with some of these kids, that's where you have to start to balance this stuff, because you're going to have to pay them sooner than had they not come into the league this season. And if they're all earning it, and by all accounts, it doesn't seem like this is a locker room that has a problem gelling together.
Yeah.
That's half the battle.
True. A very good point. You need the locker room to like each other in order and be able to create their own culture. And dare I ruffle some feathers, Tony? This is why Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane were moved out. So these young guys could build a new culture.
I'm just gonna refute that.
That's fine.
Right away.
That's fine.
Refute that right away. I think there's still something to be passed on from like a pride and tradition standpoint. And I still think that there's a way that you can look at a Jonathan Toews reunion. This is my ruffle some feathers, I guess, for the people that want to go on the other end. Take the pressure off of Connor Bedard. Jonathan Toews comes back. Who's asking Connor Bedard a question?
Fair. I think regardless of how you feel, though, about that,
he's going to Colorado.
Colorado or Winnipeg. It's one of the two. Like what happens when, you see these guys building a chemistry? You got to start signing them to contracts. Do guys take bridge deals? Are guys wanting to lock in at a longer number? That makes the Alex Vlasic contract look really freaking good right now, man. 4-6 for the next 5 years. That looks incredible. That's a stable guy who's going to continue to get better.
Who ate all the minutes when Seth Jones left?
Alex Vlasic. Now, granted, they did a nice job passing him out because Sam Renzel ate a good chunk of those minutes as well. But it was definitely those two that were kind of leading the charge in terms of the blue line, at least for the time being. Levshinov got some big minute games too. But you could be looking at that being your big three in the near future with players like maybe Ethan Del Mastro and Wyatt Kaiser and some of them kind of just helping fill out the rest of your top six. And then maybe those are guys that go graduate on and are good elsewhere. And then you got to bring up, that next wave of those young defensemen, or sign veterans that can just plug in and play, because you have the young core on the offensive side built up. Again, it gives you more clarity into what you have to work with and what you need to fill in order to field a competitive team. But you get the core pieces in place. That's huge. And it feels like we're starting to get into that territory now where that's very much going to now be Kyle Davidson's question here is, who do I got to pay?
Yeah.
In order to keep the right pieces in place. And that's why I genuinely think the
Bedard,
big money things you see from the Blackhawks this year are new contracts for Bedard and Nazar. I genuinely believe that. And that is probably the thing I feel the most convicted about. And if it doesn't happen, I'll be a little surprised. And I'll probably be here on this microphone in about 25 days, genuinely questioning if it's going to happen or not. And it might not happen right after July 1st. I'm even going to temper my own expectations. This might not happen till August.
I think you're just I think you're fighting upstream. I think the only thing that can throw this off is if Bedard's agent gets in his ear and says, wait. And you've seen those reports. I mean, that's been all over.
Even
urgent message for like clickbait fucking shit coming from India. Connor Bedard urged not to sign extension with Chicago Blackhawks because of whatever it is.
Well, what is it going to be?
Well,
he has a huge year this year.
Gut check time. Do you want to be here on the Chicago Blackhawks and sign this extension? And gut check time for Kyle Davidson. Offer something that you've evaluated that he is going to be paid fairly for his deal. That's what it comes down to, right? Because if I'm Connor Bedard's agent, I'm saying we need to get you top dollar. You've been billed as a generational talent. You deserve every dime and cent that I can earn you, because that's his cash cow, right? Is getting paid off of the Connor Bedard deal. Does Connor Bedard and his camp want to sign on the dotted line for another, 6 to 8 years in Chicago? What does that cost? And Kyle Davidson better not come up with an insulting offer. That's really what it's going to come down to.
I think it also comes down to, what does Connor Bedard want? Does he want the full 8 years at a certain number and then get a new contract when he's 28 years old? Or does he want to be Austin Matthews and take a really lucrative 4-year deal and then reevaluate in 4 years? I think that's a possibility too. And I think that's why
that'll be telling of what the strategy is going forward here.
Definitely.
I think that's the most critical part of your rebuild. If you're watching for a signal.
Yes, 100%. And that's why I believe that it can, if we're sitting here at the start of the season and Bedard hasn't signed an extension, I'm not necessarily going to panic, but I'm going to start asking questions of, like, to your point, okay, what's the plan? Because if you got him locked in, even if it was at a short and more aggressive AAV number, then at least okay, they're trying to capitalize early on maybe not having to pay some of these guys just yet. Maybe they do go a little more aggressive in the next 2 or 3 off seasons. Or
here's the other thing that's coming to mind though right now is, we just ran a whole. We're running currently a whole series of player grades.
Sure,
Bedard didn't have as good of a sophomore season as he did his rookie season. And oh man, you gave him the highest grade. Steve and I were a little bit more critical, I think.
You two were so negative.
How was I negative with that?
Tragic.
It wasn't negative. It was realistic.
Giving him that level of a grade. I'm going to tease people that haven't read the article. I think I gave him don't tell them what you gave them.
Yeah,
please go read it on sports.com. Yeah, there you go. All right. Cheers. Continue.
But it's still like, what's the dollar value there? Is there hesitancy to pay top dollar from the Blackhawks camp based on the stats and like what your models look like? I'm sure they're punching it into a computer program and evaluating where to go. You're betting on someone.
Yeah, indeed. Matt says here, he says 10 by 10, can't sign for 10, but 8 by 10. I think you could get him at 8 by 12, 12 and a half even right now. And if he's willing to take that 12 and a half, and in 4 years is going to look crazy good.
That's the same thing we said about Jonathan Taves and Patrick Kane.
And I think it still did look good.
It did look good. It still
would look, but it would look even better if they had this projection of their cap. Remember, that was back in the day when the cap only went up like $1.5 million every year, not the 7 to 8 it's projected to go up every single time. Yeah, exactly. If it's 12.5, sign it. Get it done. 12.5? Yeah. 8 years? Yeah, let's do it. But again, that's going to come down to the player.
Everybody be happy. Yeah.
That's got to come down to the player. It's got to come down to the team. What's Frank Nazar going to do? Does he do the same thing? Is it a short, or is he the guy that maybe takes a little longer?
Are you giving Frank Nazar 8, 12.5?
But then that's maybe why you give him 3 by 5 and you say, all right, go prove that, and then we'll talk again in 3 years.
Is that too dangerous? On the flip side,
you can get out of it when you don't have any cap commitment, because after next season, you have a ton of additional money falling off the books. The only players after next season that are currently under contract are Ryan Donato, Tyler Bertuzzi, Teuvo Teravainen, and Alex Vlasic. It's very limited. There's a lot of money to be had.
And this is the reason why Mitch Marner is not coming to Chicago.
Fact. Yeah, that's not happening. People need to understand to be disappointed, and I have a little bit more on that later. Tony, do you have any more bold predictions, or should we move forward?
Bold predictions. We need to keep moving the show along.
We do need to keep moving along. We've got a couple more things to touch on here, but not too much. We'll kind of breeze over this one quickly. I'm sure this will be a topic of conversation in our show next week. But buyouts start in 48 hours effectively as of the earlier today. So Friday morning, TJ Brody is 100% being bought out. There's no question about it. Just it's a when they break the news, not if it's going to happen at this point. Anything to add to that?
Goodbye. Good riddance.
Yeah.
Don't let the door hit you on the way out.
The youngsters booted you out of your seat.
Hey, that's the best case scenario.
Yeah, it is. You didn't need him to just be a filler body for another season. But I do think they add a depth defenseman in free agency for probably less money. So be on the lookout for that.
I agree. But I want to see more Big Lou next year.
Yeah, I enjoy good old Louis Crevier. I really do.
Big Lou. Get Big Lou a couple more reps. We'll see what he can
He's also in need of a new contract this offseason. So that's something we'll have to be on the lookout for. Wyatt Kaiser is too, Tone. There's a lot coming down the pipeline here. A lot coming down the pipeline. Arvid Soderblom needs a new contract as well. Tony, speaking of new contracts, CHSN's coming to Xfinity. Well, it is already technically, now. Yeah. But for me, I say coming because I'm not a White Sox fan. Why am I going to get it now? I'm going to wait till the fall, and then I'm going to get it when the Blackhawks are back.
So you're gonna get a plan. You're actually going to watch Chicago Blackhawks games this year.
I am going to.
Is this breaking news right now on
This is
Ron just over the hour mark. Ron's actually going to watch Blackhawks hockey again. That's fantastic. I'm happy for you. Yes, the CHSN feed is live on my Xfinity. I still have my antenna hooked up. I haven't decided what I'm going to do with it yet.
Well, they're getting rid of it.
It's already gone. So
that was fast.
Yeah, they only gave it like one weekend. There's actually a lot of people who are pretty disappointed on the White Sox side that they took away the antenna feed. And it's funny, you didn't hear anything from anyone about the antenna feed if it worked for them. I mean, it was free. It was great. You only had to pay $20-$30. Yeah, it was. Now, you need the Xfinity subscription.
Or the app.
Or the app, which is $30. That's a great reminder for me to cancel my subscription now that I get it as part of the Xfinity. I got to do that still. Thank you. But there's people that are big mad that are not going to get their antenna hockey. I mean, I'm pretty sure I watched Alex Ovechkin tie a record on an antenna in the year 2025.
Hilarious.
Pretty cool. I don't know what to do with the antenna. I might just
should sell it on eBay for like 45 cents.
I watched Alex Ovechkin tie Wayne Gretzky's record on this antenna in 2025, sell it on eBay. That'd be great. I don't think anybody's gonna buy that, but no, it's gonna be good. You'll be able to watch the games. That's fantastic.
Big excited. Big excited about that this coming season. Tony, we've been ruffling some feathers all show, but do you have any scheduled ruffle some feathers for us?
Not at the moment. I mean, I feel like mine was stolen earlier on.
I apologize.
With the whole Stanley Cup talk. So I mean, I'll just repeat mine from earlier.
Sure.
Seth Jones is a Stanley Cup champion.
Yeah.
That's what I had.
Ronald,
I know you've got one.
I do have one. And this is kind of just a summation, I think, of everything we talked about and everything we didn't talk about tonight. There's going to be a lot of thoughts over the next 10 to 12 days. Be ready for 0 or 100 from the Blackhawks. And what I mean by that, 100 is RFA offer sheets and like a big trade. 0 is like they don't trade number 3 and pick, and they sign like a depth defenseman, and that's all they do. It's going to be one or the other. I don't think there's a middle ground, especially because the Ryan Donato thing has already happened. Like, I think it's either going to be, whoa, okay, that was a lot more than we expected. For the reasonable fan, sorry, there is no Marner, folks. That's not even 0 or 100. That's just impossible. Maybe that's its own ruffles and feathers in itself. But I genuinely think that's how it's going to operate. So that's my ruffles and feathers. But Tony, on a more positive end, because we've been pissing off way too many people tonight, do you have any stick taps to give out?
I do, Ron. And this one, I don't think I have had the chance to tell you this story. But this is a common Tony on tap stick tap throughout Blackhawks season. I ran into our beer guy, Tony. He was out at Rate Field a couple weekends ago. We were out there enjoying a ball game out in left field. And I saw our guy walking up the steps.
That's awesome.
Beer vending. And we saw each other. He was like, I got your beers. Got me some beers.
What a legend.
And then not only did he get me some beers in about the 4th or 5th inning, as soon as Take Me Out to the Ball game played and they were cutting off alcohol sales, our guy Tony came over and was like, do you need anything else before the end of this game? Made it his point to come back and stop by and make sure that we were well nourished throughout the rest of the ball game. So stick taps to our guy Tony up there in 325-ish area, out there working White Sox games. If you see Tony in left field, give him your business. He's a great guy. Stick taps to Tony for taking care of me and yet another White Sox loss.
Well, for you, not hell yeah at the end, but hell yeah to Tony. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was good to see him over the summer. It was good to see him over the summer.
Usually it's a seasonal thing, but it's a good feeling for that. A quick note before I share my stick tap, Tony. We got a question like this earlier from Chris saying, what high ceiling forward should be targets in trade or RFA? That's probably going to be the topic of our show next week. So be on the lookout for that. I highly want to encourage. I think consensusly we're probably coming to you early in the week to avoid the old Stipe job over the weekend. But we will hashtag confirm that for you as we proceed into the weekend. So be on the lookout for stuff like that. But Tony, my stick tap goes to Ryan Donato. And I take this from a more personal angle. Good on you, man. Because sure, maybe you didn't get the star money, or maybe you left a little bit like in the immediate future on the table on an AAV basis with what contract you took. But good on you as a guy who was a journeyman to be able to say, hey, my family doesn't have to move out of a city for 6 years. And over that amount of time, I'm going to make almost $25 million to play hockey. And you get to live in the city of Chicago. That's pretty fucking cool and tough. So big stick taps to Ryan Donato for that working out for him. And then, of course, again, we talked about it at nauseum. What a great marriage contract for both sides. So I think that was awesome to see. Tony, What's on tap?
Oh, I've got one additional stick tap in here.
Oh, please.
It's our guy Voodoo. Apparently, one of the last times that you and I were on a phone call late at night, I had taken a screenshot of something that apparently almost doxed you, and Voodoo caught it right away and told me, "Hey, you just posted Ron's phone number online." So he just texted me right now in the background and said, "You owe me the stick tap." So he caught it within like 5 seconds, and we took it down. So I don't. I had to give some thanks.
Holy shit, Voodoo! You're the real MVP. You get my stick tap too.
Yeah,
so
you owe him a stick tap, not me.
Holy shit! Well, good. Thank God that you are a gem.
Because
what are you doing, Tony?
I don't know. It was not my finest moment.
Man,
it was just on in the background.
That would have been so bad.
Ron, don't worry, got you, brother.
Oh, that would have been so bad. I would have been miserable, and you would be paying to get me a new phone number.
Yeah, I would.
I know. Oh, God, Beer's got the best of them. Ain't that the truth?
Beer's got the best of them. That happens sometimes.
That does happen sometimes. Voodoo, you're a legend. I owe you a beer, good sir.
I don't, surprisingly, I don't remember this happening, but you just gave me a reminder.
Terrifying, but thank you. Note to self: don't remind Tony to not give out my phone number to the random general public. Well, what else is on tap?
8675309.
No, yeah, good song. On that note, other things that are on tap, including my reminder for you on a regular basis, include the draft and free agency. That's our primary focus here over the next 2+ weeks. Round 1 action is on June 27th. That is a week from Friday. Saturday will be the conclusion of said draft. And Matt asking here in the comments, or our boy Voodoo, the Four Feathers podcast live draft watch party for round 1? Maybe.
I think you're gone though.
No, I'm not gone for the draft. I am not out of town for the draft. I am out of town for free agency start.
That's okay.
I'm around. I'm around on night 1. We will talk about it, Voodoo. We will talk about it. I feel like I owe Voodoo now for catching Tony's boo-boo. We should give him a Four Feathers first round watch party. I'll crack some beers on the old StreamYard here. No problem. Happily. Don't give the Ottawans Ron's numbers.
That's great.
It's true. I would be struggling. I'd be struggling. Anthony asks, do you know when your next stream will be? We're hoping, again, early next week is the game plan for Four Feathers. And then if we're going to do a live draft party, you'll get to hear from us twice next week, which has been a hot minute since you've heard from Four Feathers podcast twice in 1 week. So I think we are definitely due. And then, of course, as we noted, July 1st, free agency, my Christmas morning. I will be waking up in beautiful Northern California on that morning to lots and lots of NHL free agency.
Described Northern California as beautiful before?
Napa Valley's beautiful. So
I digress.
I'll be out there for a wedding. So pretty excited about that. It'll be a good time. So, but yeah, that's what we got coming up. We will be back before the completion of the first round, potentially twice.
Yes.
Then be in for a post-draft podcast that will be from you, Tony, and our guy, Mr. Steve. That'll be a great one as well. So plenty of content coming out here in the not so distant future. Voodoo wants hashtag wine drunk Ron. I got a lot of wine, so we could make that happen. I don't really get wine drunk though, Tony.
No, not a big vino guy.
Oh no. Not like I don't enjoy drinking wine. I actually very much enjoy wine. Probably more than I thought I would ever enjoy wine. I don't really get like the wine drunk that people describe from wine.
That's a shame.
I don't get that. Like, I feel like that's like a whoa, we're going for a lot of people. For me, it's kind of like it just makes me want to get sleepy and kind of melt into a couch and watch like things on YouTube.
Maybe
I don't know.
A couple of Big Macs.
I don't know. Dude, I haven't had a Big Mac in forever. Even before you claimed that I ate that one because I didn't eat the Big Mac.
You ate the Big Mac.
No, actually, that's not true.
Right.
I've 100% had a Big Mac since then, so I'd be a liar to you, even whether or not I
There we
ate
go.
it or
Yeah,
not.
yeah. You ate the Big Mac. There it is.
I did not eat the Big Mac.
I'm gonna selectively edit that.
I did not. Oh, he's Voodoo
In
saying
Napa.
in Napa. Oh, shit, maybe. We'll find out. But I mean, could be wine drunk on the draft thing too. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. Tony, this was a hell of a show, but we were overdue for a conversation. Again, incredible content coming out from our friend the Prospect Don and a lot of other great content creators that we're hoping to do some more stuff with this year. That's a goal here for Four Feathers Podcast. So again, be on the lookout for all the good stuff coming over the summer. And then as we get into the rest of the season, electric show. Thank you, Voodoo. We appreciate you and all the other great commenters joining us tonight as well. Thanks to everybody that watched along on X or on Facebook or wherever you tuned in with us. And if you're consuming this via a podcast, we appreciate that as well. As always, ontapsportsnet.com and at ontapsportsnet at Four Feathers Pod is where you can find us. Of course, you know where to find Tony and I personally. Be sure to follow our boy Steve as well. Plenty of good things coming from the Four Feathers Podcast. Be on the lookout for that. Once again, on Tap Sportsnet. Check out what's on tap in Chicago sports. Tony, it is always a pleasure talking Blackhawks hockey with you, my friend. I was itching for it, so I'm glad we got to do this. Little midweek action, and happy weekend to you, Tony, because we're an hour away from Thursday, and the weekend starts on Thursdays, man.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. I'm off tomorrow. It's a great day. Great day.
Excellent.
When you're off of work. So yeah, Ron, this was great. Again, you close this down perfectly. But again, another thank you to everybody who was in the comments.
100%.
Close it down how we always do, Ron.
Let's go Hawks, baby.
Let's go Hawks.